Welcome to another episode of Confidence Factor Talks for Men. I am one of your co-hosts for tonight, Lamont Gwen. So happy to be here, man. Listen, it's summertime, so the crew can't be all together, right? Summertime, trips going on, people got stuff to do. So I am honored to share the stage today with my brother Bobby B. How you doing tonight, brother?
Brother, what's going on? Man, today's a great day and it is the best day of my life, man. Wow.
It's man, when I tell you this Florida heat is no joke.
Yeah.
Like my air conditioner says it's set for 77, but that thing is reading 87.
Yeah. It's weird. Mine is on 77 also.
it's crazy. And I got the living room fan on, but I also got these lights on. So it's just like I would just say this. I'm not complaining. Because I'd rather deal with the hot than the cold. That's just me.
Real talk.
It's just me. I'll take the heat any day over the cold. So welcome to the show. We're going to give a big shout out to Rudy LaRose, who's always in the building. We give a big shout out to Javon and a big shout out to the birthday boy himself, Derry Hill, who is in Mexico.
Mexico. He's a chocolate Mexican.
Chocolate Mexican. Yeah, man. So this is going to be a great show tonight. We're going to talk about our topic for tonight is one of the biggest things that erodes confidence. One of the biggest things that erodes confidence. What is that? We'll talk about it. And before we do that, brother, tell them about Confidence Factor. Who are we? What do we do?
Man, Confidence Factor. We are excited to have you guys here with us tonight. Confidence Factor. We help men to pursue their purpose by developing their confidence factor. And this is CF Talks, and this is where we have our heart level conversations that lead to transformation. Women say if men don't talk. I don't think it's true. They just haven't been in our environment. So we get together, we have these talks. These are men that are in business, and we share ideas, tips, tricks, techniques. And we do that by use of our SMART principles. The Greeks had a saying that said, know thyself. It's hard to know other people when you don't even know yourself, right? So that requires self-mastery. So we use our SMART principles. It's an acronym. Self-mastery is the first piece of that. And again, that's going within. We believe that you have to play an inside game on an outside world as opposed to an outside game on an inside world. That's something deep. We'll dive into that a little bit later. And our second principle of our SMART principle is accountability. The accountability is better to be in a community. You're more likely to show up and keep your commitments and do the things that you said you were going to do if you are being held accountable. So that's so big right now. If you look all through Facebook and look through all these different groups, courses and things that people are selling in self-education, self-development, you notice they all have a community because it helps you to thrive and helps you keep that accountability. And the last of our SMART principles is resources and tools. In order to be able to strive to get ahead, to get to the next level, to level up, as Dr. Love Jones would say, you have to have resources and you have to have the right tools. Can you imagine going to a gold mine, trying to dig out gold with a spoon?
Right.
Man, that won't work. So we need the right tools. So we got to figure out what those resources and tools are. And this is the place where you do that. And one of the two resources that we have is this show. We bring on experts, professionals, coaches, to just share information, nuggets to help you guys to begin to thrive in your businesses and or begin to take the first step to start your business. So that's our SMART principles. Lamont, one of the biggest things we found is that men feel lonely. They feel isolated. They feel like they don't matter, man. They just like, in our culture, our society, it's like men are last on the totem pole. Yeah. Even though we're we're a patriarchal society, man, we still, people who look like us talk like us. Man, we're last on the totem pole. Right. So we got to get together and share these ideas and just talk about it. So we are up against what we call the lid, men that feel lonely, isolated, and feel like they don't matter. So that's our enemy. That's who we're combating against. And we've done that by creating this wonderful, tremendous community, again, where we can share ideas, thoughts, and just share tips, tricks, and techniques.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we have been, I think we're like in week number 8. Are we in week number 8? We're going into week number 9.
Oh man,
Week
that's
number
yeah,
9
probably, yeah,
of,
probably might even probably week
yeah,
9.
is it 9 or 10? When of
Might
our,
be 10 because we
yeah,
did
10.
the
Yeah, yeah.
5 cycles of emotional change,
Yep.
and then we did organized planning twice.
Yep.
That probably puts us in week number 10.
Yeah, we had week 10 of our mastermind, Unleash Your Riches. And man, it's been transformational. Going through the book, Think and Grow Rich. It's so funny how, I'm reading this book and I'm like, wait a minute, how did I miss this the first time? How did I miss this the first time? So Unleash Your Riches. Riches stands for 1, relationships, income, the I, C, community contribution, H, health and fitness, E, education, S, spirituality. We believe that Unleash Your Riches is not just about money, but it's about the entire man. And so I am really excited to be a part of this community, really excited to be a part of the mastermind, and really excited about this conversation because we're going to talk about the one of the biggest things that erodes confidence. And what is that thing? Well, I got to give it to you early in the show, right? Because that one thing, and it may be small, it may seem small, but it's so big. And it's the one thing that my brother, you, Bobby, you have taught me, and this 3-year journey that I've been on. And one of the biggest things that can erode your confidence is honoring your commitments. And I can tell you from my personal experience that I have in the past have made promises to myself, promises to others, and those have constant. And by breaking those, it little by little by little, it chips away at your confidence. I started to not believe in myself. I started to say, "Okay, I'm gonna start this. I think I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. I'm gonna try to do it," and then you start back over again, right?
Yeah.
It's this constant wheel of starting and stopping, of disappointing your own self.
Mm-hmm.
Just and the worst, I think, and we can't. I'm not going to say the worst, but disappointing others as well can really erode your confidence because it can actually lessen trust. Like people can, when you don't honor commitments, people can actually not trust you. I remember there was this, and he was on the show before, Dale Dupree. I had a meeting with him one time and I showed up like 15 minutes late. And he said to me when I walked in, he was like, hey, I appreciate you showing up, but actually, I've actually scheduled another meeting. And so I need to take that meeting and, maybe we can schedule another time. Boy, you talk about, whew, I was like, wow. Having that experience really had a profound effect on me in my timeliness, right? I really started to consider time, but that ties back into commitment, because a part of keeping your commitment is really looking at time too, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a real big eye opener for me. But what I will say, Bobby B, is along this journey, I have watched you. And one of the things that I admire about you is the fact that you just have this show up. I want to say show upness. One of the things that I admire about you is how you commit to your commitments. And I want to ask you, where did that come from for you? Why is it that you show up the way you show up?
Yeah, it's so strange because I actually, one of the greatest things that ever happened is I became a master storyteller. And it wasn't just becoming a master storyteller, it was listening to some of the principles that the coach was like just little phrases and things he was saying along the way that just made sense to me. That was one of the ways that I began to start showing up. The other, like he would say things like you cannot consistently be who you are not.
Mm.
You cannot consistently be who you are not. And I used to sit and think. Like he would just say it and keep going. But I like, me, I like to pull out little notes and nuggets. So I wrote that one down and I just started thinking like you cannot consistently be who you are not. That's pretty like, you know.
Yeah.
And he talked about being congruent. One of the biggest things that I think I've ever heard him say was he said that self-confidence comes from self-trust.
Mm.
And self-trust comes from keeping the promises that we make to ourselves.
Mm.
So if you don't keep a promise, and it's really deep if you think about it, right? Because self-confidence comes from self-trust. Self-trust comes from keeping the promises you make to yourself. Okay, Lamont, I'll be there at 6:00. If I don't come at 6:00, like I made a commitment to you, but I've also made a commitment to myself. And then you have to think about it. Like I began to think about it as if I don't even keep the promises to myself, how the hell am I really going to keep a promise to you? I can't even really do that.
Mm.
I began to, again, my whole theory is play the inside game on the outside world. That's my philosophy, right? So if I'm playing the inside game on the outside world, it's always, even though I'm committing and doing things externally with other people, I'm really first doing it with myself. And if I cannot and won't do it with myself, then I probably will not and cannot do it with you, which leads us into another space because then other people may be depending on you to do something that you would never do because you don't have the practice of it. So that was like just one string. If I had like a piece of rope, that would be one cord on the overall rope spectrum, right?
Okay.
But
I got you.
yeah, but it's a combined effort. The other thing I learned, and I'll turn it over to you after this, is that the other piece, which is like another chord, is that I used to listen to all these like one year I read like 55 books in 1 year, right? And I got one common chord, and the common chord was like you are what you think. You are what you think. That's the one biggest takeaway I got from reading 55 books in one whole year, is that you are what you think. And so that starts to make you think about like, what are you thinking? What exactly are you thinking? So as I continue to read those books and continue on the journey, again with my coach and all these various, I keep finding these common chords, that these habits that everyone practice. And so as I read so many books, I read Javon's book, Dr. Love Jones, Level Up. I read Jose Flores's book, Indispensable Now. I read Andy Henriquez's books, Show Up, Live Your Dreams, Les Brown. All of these books had another common chord in them, which was showing up, right? Listening to Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor used to say that that success was 95% mental, 5% strategy. Tony Robbins would say success is 80% mindset and 20% strategy or whatever, right? So all these little things began to add up. So I realized that showing up is damn near 80 to 90% of the game, because it's the mindset. So when I started Vortex, which is an online training program that we have that we use, showing up, I used to tell the people that showing up is 80%. If you just show up, that's actually 80% of the workout, right? Showing up is 80% of anything, because it's not just the show up. It's the work that you're doing mentally prior to showing up, because a lot of people say they're going to do it, but a lot of people don't show up to do it. A lot of people say they're going to do it, but a lot of people don't even get started on doing it. So somehow in my brain, between that common chord, this common chord, and some other things, again, I created a rope for this thing, but I realized that showing up is like 80% of the battle. If I'm here and other people are here, especially like in the community, chances are I'm going to get it done. But if I don't even get there, then it's zero. It's guaranteed zero. But getting there is like 80%. So that show up factor for me was me convincing myself that the bulk of the work is done. I've already passed the test just by being there. The rest of it is just taking the steps and the actions that are required while I'm there. And so I put that in my head that you could win if you could show up at least most of the time.
Right.
Yeah. So I know I went the long route, but
no, I love that,
it's
brother.
like a whole workability in my mind about showing up.
Yeah, and what's interesting one of what I heard you say was, listen, I have consulted a lot of advisors through books, right? And through that education, I figured out that it's that if I show up, that's the bulk of the work.
Yeah.
Well, here's what's interesting. I don't want to gloss over this. You read 55 books in a year.
Yeah.
That in itself, talk about that, because that was a commitment to yourself, right?
Yeah. I don't know, man. It was weird. That was a weird year. I was still going through transition.
Okay.
And I was looking for something, right? And I was convinced that I was still in the mindset that, you know how we always have this mindset, like we're trying to get the money.
Right.
And we're trying to get to the money. I want to make me some money, right? That's the common phrase. I want to get the bag. And so I was still in this, I'm transitioning, but I want to get back on track as fast as possible mindset. And with that, I was looking for a tip, a trick, or strategy that would expedite me or quantum leap me into financial success, right? And I really wasn't still bent on the idea that this was a journey, that this has to be a way of life. See, it's one thing if you read the book and it says to you, show up. You read 10 books and all 10 books say, show up. So you're like, oh, I got to show up. But if you only show up 3 times out of 30, then it's not a part of you. It's not in your DNA. So when I first read, I was still reading from, okay, it's going to give me a tip, trick, or strategy. I'm going to implement that and I'll be good to go. It was still this destination or arrival mindset, as opposed to let me enjoy this whole thing all the way out. Yeah. Just make it a part of a lifestyle, right? So the 55 books, how I ended up doing that is I hit the button. I did like 107 lives or 108 lives 5 days a week, like just straight. It took me 4.5 months to do that. And on one of the lives, I had just said, oh, I'm going to read 12 books this year. And then I hit the button to end the live. And I said to myself after that, I said, why did you tell these people you're going to read 12 books? I said, bro, you never read no damn 12 books in no year. That's 1 book a month. I was like, are you crazy? Like you like at the time, I think I was only reading like Think and Grow Rich, Og Mandino, which is the greatest salesman in the world, and like Richest Man in Babylon. Those are kind of like the 3 books I was kind of revolving. And I would read pieces of them throughout the year. Og Mandino I was doing pretty regularly, but the other one was only pieces. But after I hit the end button, I told these people I'm gonna do 12 books in a year. And I said, bro, are you just saying stuff? Like, you never done that. That's crazy. And so right after I hit the end button, I panicked. I was like, yo, you just committed like live that you were gonna do this. You better start now, because one a month is 12. So you better start now, and you can't slip. As I began reading, Lamont, what happened was, I don't know, I just got into this rhythm. And the next thing you know, I was just listening more and listening to books, reading books, picking books up, stopping. And so I got to the point, and I'm talking about not just 55 books, like some of them I read several times, like multiple times. Like some of them I read like 3 or 4 times, and I counted only as 1. So again, because I made the commitment, I knew I had to show up, and the people were gonna probably be like, hey, did you read the books? Right? So it was by accident, I guess. I just got into the zone, and I just didn't want to stop.
And the incredible thing is, you said, because I made the commitment live,
yeah,
I went through it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I made commitments live, and bro,
Yeah.
I made many commitments on the live that I just didn't follow through with. And it's so interesting that that's why I'm probably have been very silent on social media
Mhm.
lately, because except for confidence factor, it's because I'm in the background now doing the foundational things in order to show up consistently, in order to say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this commitment. And when I make this commitment, I'm going to follow through with it. And I
Right.
think oftentimes what happened is we folks make commitments without having the foundational things in place to actually make the commitment stick.
Yeah. And with that, the people, places, the resources and things can show up if you really mean it. I think it's the intention behind it,
Mm,
right? Like one of the things I always say is like to think is to put it in ink, right? So what that simply means for me is that like, and then you share this a lot, and I'd like for you to actually talk about that, like writing it down. Like you and I had a mastermind call the other day, and we would just share. I was sharing some ideas with you, and you were like, "Yo, did you write it
right down.
down?"
Right.
And I was still in the beginning phases, but it was great that you said that to me because I immediately came home, cleaned off my dry erase board, and I wrote everything out the way I wanted to see it. And then at writing it out, you can see what's missing. So at least you'll know what parts are missing. You can see what you have. And I don't know, to get it out of your brain and onto the paper is a very powerful thing.
It is. It is. And when you in the book, the Think and Grow Rich, it talks about planning. What is it? What's that? It's what kind of planning is it? It's
Organized planning.
organized planning, right?
Yeah.
Organized planning, right? And in that chapter, it talks about taking your plans and writing them down, right? And in going through that chapter, I actually purchased me a journal just for plans, so that instead of me saying, oh, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to write the plan down.
Mm.
And the plan, by writing the plan down, you get to see the steps. You get to see, you know, how am I actually going to achieve this thing? How am I actually going to make this commitment happen? And seeing those steps and writing the plan down, you can actually build out a plan, put dates, times to that plan, and then you can actually implement the plan in order to keep the commitment. And it's commitment to yourself, man. And so that's where I'm at right now. There's a lot of things happening in the background for me. And one of the things that's helping me is to take advantage of writing in that book. I've got to actually have some plans I need to put in before I go to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
So here, I'm gonna make that commitment live. And tomorrow, you ask me, did you write your plan down? Because
Right,
we can
right.
talk anyway, right? So, so yeah, man, that writing those plans down is so important, because you get to see, is this something I'm thinking about just in my head? Is this something I can really talk about? Is this something I'm going to do? And sometimes we look at we look at a commitment. I know, let me just phrase it for myself. I'll say this is what I want to do, but having not thought out the plan, when you get going into it, I've come to realize, oh, this is more than I bargained for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when becomes more than you bargain for, and you don't have the time allotted for it, or you start making excuses, it's easy to dump the commitment, right? And so, yeah, man, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like I know for me, one of the things being married and everything too, is that one of the things that I found some motivation with was keeping my promises.
Mm,
Keeping my promises as a married person. Some people that's in relationships, you have a significant other, as part of the relationship. You make certain commitments. To do certain things, and I think especially like after you've been married for a while, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, your marriage could get stagnant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you get kind of used to each other, right? And so those commitments is like, oh, well, you said 5 years ago we was going to Fiji. Well, it was 5 years later, you still ain't go to Fiji. 10 years, you still ain't go to Fiji, right? You made some commitments. It gets watered down, and you begin to water down your own words and how people hear you when you don't follow through.
Mm.
So, everybody has, probably somebody that, you be like, oh, they just talking.
Right.
You don't take it seriously because you don't see the follow through on the other things. So
Right.
when you talk about, like, you say, hey, I got to write it down. And a lot of people, like you say, the schedule. So one of the things, like I say, to think is to put it in ink. In my phone, I probably got like 30, 40 alarms, bro. I'll put an appointment. My appointment will go off 2 days before, a day before. I do it 2 hours before, 1 hour before, and I use the calendar plus the alarm. But it's probably overkill. But I make it. I usually make it like, 95, 98% of the time. I'll make it because I put it in there. But I'm almost nervous sometimes. I'm like, what if I didn't put it in?
Right.
And for other people, like when somebody says, oh, they didn't make it or they forgot, like I'd be like, oh, did you like put in your phone? Did you put alarm? Did you put a schedule? And usually you'll find most people don't do those things. They think it's too much. But if your success in winning means that you could win more often just by showing up, then yeah, I'm going to take that option. So I've been testing it out for a number of years now. And it's, for the most part, it works. It works.
It's interesting you say that, because mine is 2 hours before, an hour before, 30 minutes before, 15 minutes before, and at the time of. And on everything that goes onto my calendar, it's 5 notifications.
Wow.
I have to be reminded like that, or I will forget. I need to be prompted because I'm moving in so many different directions, and I'm actually doing some. I'm actually working on some foundational things so that I don't spread myself as much like that. But those notifications really help. And it's interesting for me is I find that when it comes to my business, okay, business on this end, on this hand, personal life on this hand, right? I find that for business, I have my show upness, my commitments. I take so much more. It's for me. It's I don't know why, but for my business stuff, I have felt. Let me just say this: I have felt like it's way more important to commit to those things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I remember at a time doing business when I was in Baltimore, like I would literally have, it's so shameful. I cannot believe I'm about to say this. I would literally have people at the studio waiting for me and call me and be like, I'm downstairs and I'm at home like, oh, yo, oh my goodness. And now I'm scrambling, got to make a bunch of, give extra photos now to make up for my lack of commitment, right? I knew how to smooth it out. I knew how to take care of the client when I messed up, right? And I knew how to take ownership for it. I came to the realization that I needed to be, when it came to my business, I needed to be, my goal was to have a 5-star business that no one could ever walk away from an experience with me and say, man, this man is garbage, right? I want my clients to be like, this was an experience that I will recommend, all my family, friends, my network to. And so I think over the last 5 years, well, more than 5 years, over the last 13, well, it's a little, okay, over the last 10 years, we'll say, I've been way more committed to making sure that I meet my commitments when it came to my clients. Like when I say that you're going to get your pictures in a week, to make sure that I get them to them in a week. You know, whatever I say that I'm going to do on the business side to actually do just that. Uh, and then, you know, on the personal side, I think that's where Unleash Your Riches has really been helping,
Yeah.
right? Because on the personal side, I get to be a part of the community of accountability, of, you know, us having those courageous conversations when we need to. And you guys just feeding into each other so that we can, you know, commit to our commitments.
Yeah. It's truly is, again, going back to the SMART principles, right? It truly is helpful to have that accountability,
Yeah.
to have the, other people around you. And, to be honest, sometimes, you have those 5% or 7 or 8% times when you don't want to show up.
Yep.
There are times, like, even though you guys always say, oh, B, you always show up all the time. I do. But there are times when I'm like, dude, I would rather not show up right now. And, honestly, what helps sometimes is knowing that you have a reputation for showing up.
Yeah.
Sometimes in those like 5% of the times, or, 8% of the times, whatever it is, when you don't want to, that's a little kick in the butt to say, hey, these guys recognize you as showing up. It's helpful, it can be done. And this is just one of the times when you need an extra push. So separate from the habit of it, you do have the times where you get down, and you do have the times where, with those ebbs and flows where you're dipping a little bit.
Right.
And you need that little reminder, like, nah, this is the image, or this is who you intend to show up as. You need to do that. And even in Vortex, when I learned that 80% of success is mindset, again, I just attached that to showing up. So I have this coach. He used to forget his name. It escapes me right now, but he used to coach the coach on the Tennessee team, the college football team. He's somewhere else now, but one time I was in the car with him, and he said, there's only two times. He said, there's only two times you need to show up: when you feel like it, and when you don't.
Mm.
When I heard that from him, being a winning coach and very successful, I said, man, that's very powerful. So, obviously I do my Bobby B notes. I wrote it down. I say, okay, I'm gonna reflect on that, because when I started doing Vortex, which is the online workout program, that's one of the things I would get the clients to commit to. I get them to commit to, and I tell them right up front, I only want you to show up 2 times. Now, this is easy because it's only twice, right? Right. Okay. When you feel like it, good. Okay. And when you don't, okay, gotcha. It's those times when you don't feel like showing up is the time where hey, remember the 2 times you're supposed to show up.
Right.
So it covers everything. And so that began something we began to play with when you feel like it and when you don't. So now you take it out of the health and fitness category, and now you start taking those philosophies, principles, whatever, and now put it in other areas of your life. It's only 2 times I want you to show up: when you feel like it and when you don't. Now I found myself showing up more often and doing more things. That was like another cord in that rope.
Yeah.
So this is something that over the years, for my personal philosophy, I built it up, all just around showing up. And again, it's not just to show up; it's these cords of rope that go, that principles that go along with it that reinforce and drive it. And so you say, if a person is not showing up, then you have to ask, okay, well, what's the value system? What's the belief system? What's the philosophy? And how are you? What processes are you following to be able to show up? And 9 times out of 10, you probably won't hear one.
Right.
Which is why it's happening. So, we always talk about, thought attracts that upon which it is directed. Basically, where attention goes, energy flows. So if you are putting 5 alarms, 2 hours before, 1 hour before, 30 minutes before, 15 minutes, and at the time, your thought attention is on being there.
Right.
And if you put that much energy into just getting there, the odds of you following through with that, let's call it this, momentum,
Right.
is very likely.
Yeah.
And you're building up the momentum before you got there. One of the most powerful things, this for me, this was another chord on the road. Kobe Bryant. I watched the video on YouTube.
Oh man.
Yeah, I watched the video on YouTube, and I would watch this video and listen to the video and or listen to it during my Vortex workouts. And that's what he says, like, if you're going to be a basketball, if your job is to be the best basketball player you can be, then he begins talking about showing up. And what was so interesting about he's talking about showing up is not just show up one time. He was showing up 3 times a day to practice. Now, this is important because you mentioned something earlier about in the dark, behind the scenes. Sometimes people don't see your body moving. They think nothing's happening.
Right.
Kobe Bryant was one of those people where he'd be in the gym early in the morning, getting in the early morning workout. He said he'd work out game winning moves, game winning practice moves. Not just like, oh, just toss the ball. No, he practicing like somebody's on him, like he's in a scrimmage, a game. And then he'd eat, go home, rest. After his rest, he'd come back and start for his round 2. And he'd go through the whole thing again like he was never even at the gym. Go home, rest, come back a 3rd time like he was not even there 2 times prior in the day. And what he said is that it begins to create a gap. By the time your opponent tries to, he said, and here's the other thing he said, I know what practices they're running. So he knows your practice. He could do your practice, and he's also doing a private practice, and he's doing it 3 times a day. What are you doing during those other 2 times? So he said that the gap between you and him over years and over time, it begins to, he didn't use this phrase, but basically compound.
Right.
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 And to the point where, like, he's 5 years ahead.
Right.
Right. You even think about catching up and trying it. He's 5 years ahead because he put that time in. So for me, when I was doing those workouts, I would listen to that and hear the importance. And then you go back and reflect on his championships. Right. That was a championship mentality. And so that's what I would take into my workouts, is hearing that I can go and I could do it again. And sometimes I would do 2 workouts in a day. Right. So, but here's the interesting part you mentioned earlier, and this is the point I want to really get to, is that you said, I'm doing sometimes things behind the scenes. And again, when people don't see your body moving, they think nothing's happening. And this is what I say, remember that film that would develop in the dark.
Right.
We're used to.
Right.
Good film, they're going to put you in that dark room. You don't see nothing. By the time it goes in the frame and on the wall, everybody's like, oh, this is nice. But it develops in the dark. So not always showing up, but there's times I believe you have to pull back and refrain from being so exposed to putting yourself out there, because what I wouldn't want to do is put myself in a situation where I'm being known as the show up, and I show up when I'm not prepared. I show up when I should have I show up when I could have recommitted or asked for a little grace for another day or another time. So part of the commitment is not just showing up to the actual thing. Part of the commitment is understanding when you have to recalibrate or you've overcommitted.
Right.
And showing up might just be, hey, look, I know I said we can do it 6, but can we go ahead and move that to here because I got XYZ going on? That's still showing up.
Right.
And respecting the other person's time, like you said, what happened with the other brother.
Yeah, man. Capacity. A lot of times it comes down to capacity. Sometimes we make promises and we just don't have the capacity. And when we don't have the capacity, what that does, it erodes trust.
Yes.
Yep. It erodes trust. So, on what you just said, you don't want to be the person who's always switching up the thing either, right? Right. Yeah. Always switching, like, oh, I know this one, you're gonna put it on the calendar and all, and switch up, right? And so that doesn't benefit you either. And I want to go back to what you were saying, because it took me back to a time when I was overweight, had a 40-inch waist, and I really got tired of being sick and tired of being a fat boy. And I remember the day that I packed my bag, and I packed the bag, and I hadn't gone, signed up for the gym, hadn't gone. And then it was just this day that I said, okay, today begins it. And I became relentless in the gym. And then it got to the point that I started doing 2 workouts a day because I started seeing the results, right?
Mhm.
And when I started seeing the results, I'm like, okay, if I'm starting to see the results on 1 workout a day, what if I just add another workout? And what I found in the year that I consistently was on the journey of weight loss, right? I in building muscle, I literally saw myself change while people at the gym stayed the same.
Say the same. Wow.
Right. You go to the gym, you see the same people, and it's like, wow, I don't see any progress. I really then, once I committed to the commitment, once I said, you know what, I'm going to start, and I'm not going to stop. I'm going to commit to this. That's when it just really, really hit for me. And when I tell you, I'm almost scared to go back to that guy. uh, I was scared to go back to that guy. So let's talk about um, before we get into the some tips for keeping commitments. I want to kind of talk about the benefits. What benefits have you personally seen for yourself by uh, showing up and committing to your commitments? What benefits have you personally seen?
Yeah, so it's the follow through, right? The follow through and the execution. Um, Again, showing up and keeping your commitments is not just the showing up. There's a whole work that takes place. And I know you're asking one specific question, but I want to kind of just, it's a part of it. Another chord on there is that the reason why people will not, what is going to erode your confidence, a piece of this is that not showing up, a lot of times there's this self-criticism or imposter syndrome. Things like that are working in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So as we said in our book, 7 Steps to Unstoppable Confidence, one of the steps on 7 Steps to Unstoppable Confidence by Confidence Factor for Men, one of the steps that Darian put in there is that he was talking about self-talk, how you talk to yourself. And sometimes you won't show up because of negative self-talk, self-criticism. That's important because again, you see me show up, but sometimes I have to fight the self-criticism or negative self-talk. Nobody, nobody looking for you. People, they ain't nobody think about, man, people, right? Or hey, maybe I go and I'm not gonna be as good as everyone else. So that negative self-talk or that criticism, or you trying to talk yourself out of it, your self-talk takes place prior to you arriving. So when you show up, it means that you've overcome negative self-talk or self-doubt another day. And what we're trying to do is get into, like what Dean Graziosi says, is those millionaire success habits. We want to have the habits that millionaires have, or the habits that successful people have. And one of the habits has to be is that you need to show up. So you have to find ways to show up. But again, me showing up or you showing up, it's not that I'm just here. It's I've bypassed all the excuses. I bypassed the negative self-talk. I bypassed the procrastination. I'll do it later. All those things you've jumped past. So now think about it. If you show up and you have one show a week for the year, and it's 52 weeks, and you show up for 48 out of 52 or 40 out of 52, that's 40 times that you've bypassed self-doubt, self-criticism, excuses, and different things like that. So that's it. So the momentum is what you gain, because now I'm building that neural pathway in my mind of successful habits. And if you want to know who a person is, then you just watch the habits, and the habits will kind of dictate where this is going to go.
Nice. I like that. For me, I can say that over the last 3 years, one of the commitments have been this show. I remember in 2020, when we were going through the pandemic, I did this show called Conquering Through the Crisis, man. And I was horrible. I didn't know how to interview. I just did it. And by me showing up to this show every Tuesday, if you go back a year ago and you watch how I showed up on camera, you're going to literally see my advancement and growth
Yeah.
through this process. You're going to literally see the day that the light switch flipped and it's like, oh, this guy is different. Because being in this environment, I actually learned by being in the background, watching you guys, taking notes, and then by being here for being committed to this, I can see actually the growth and
Mhm.
the progress that I've made just by showing up in the commitment, committing to the commitment. So when you commit to it, when you commit to your commitment, there's some growth there, right? There's some elevation. It's not just about tapping yourself on the back and saying that I showed up.
Mhm.
There's something there that you gain even beyond just showing up. You get a different skill set. You know, something grows inside of you. And that's another important part about the importance of showing up, because in that committing to your commitment, there's growth there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of growth, right? Because if you think about it, look, we don't have 10,000 people watching the show,
Right.
right? So, but I know for someone like myself in the past, I'd be quick to quit something. All right, oh, this ain't working. I'm out, right?
Right.
But the new person that's on the journey says, you don't know what's going to happen and when.
Right.
You get somebody watching the show that has an opportunity for confidence factor or whatever. Say, man, these guys continue to show up. Somebody may come and be like, hey, man, we need a group of guys to host this thing, but we need you there every week because we have a history of showing up. To show up is not a big deal. There
Right.
might be somebody out there looking for that quality of that trait. It's a huge thing
Yeah.
to show up. It's a huge thing because most people won't.
Right.
Yeah. So you never know what's going to take it. But I think mostly, again, it's a part of DNA, right? Showing up is easy now, right? So if I can show up for this, I can show up for something else.
Right.
So at least if something else comes along, I may have some thoughts of, am I the right person or can I do the job? But it won't be, can I show up?
Yeah.
And that's a part of your confidence that I believe a person is going to need. And so shout outs to Wayne Moody. Wayne, we see you out there. And for those of you joining, I know it's a little late in the game, but type in our heart level, put heart level in the chat. We have these heart level conversations that lead to transformation. If you're in business, tell us a little bit about some of the things that you might be experiencing about showing up. Do you think showing up is important? And what has your experience been? So you can put that in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, feel free to type in hashtag replay. Go ahead, Lamar.
Yeah, man. So let's talk about Wayne Moody said, practicing forgiving myself at the end of each day.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty dope. That's pretty dope. That's pretty dope. So let's talk about some of the some tips about how to honor your commitment that'll help you honor your commitment. Tip number one: you're in a conversation with somebody, you're making a commitment. Confirm what you heard to ensure that you're on the same page. Simple,
Mm-hmm.
right? Mark your calendar, write your commitments on paper. We said that already. Before you commit to anything, ask yourself if it aligns with your priorities. That's a big one, because oftentimes we want to, there's this desire to say yes to, and some people desire to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes things just don't align. And one of the things that I've learned to say in those times is, I'd love to, but I just don't have the bandwidth. I
Yeah.
love to, but I just don't have the bandwidth. That's what I found. And it lands well with folks because they can understand, okay, I understand that you might overextend yourself if you say yes to this. So, for a new role or task, find out what the commitments are before agreeing to it. Yeah, I'll help you out with your party. But what does that mean?
Yeah. What does that entail?
What
Yeah.
does that entail, right?
Yeah.
So, you don't want to make you don't want to make
General.
commitments, general commitments, right? General commitments that could entail a whole lot more than you bargained for.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have the capacity to fulfill the commitment. We already said that. And don't make promises based on circumstances that are out of your control. Don't
Mm.
make promises based on circumstances that are out of your control.
You sound like you got a
Whoa.
story in that thing. You sound like you got a story in that.
Yeah, man. So, it's interesting how in life sometimes you go back and you're thinking like, wow, I can see how I really messed that one up. Right. So, yeah, this was a great conversation. Where you at?
Yeah, I think you said it in the beginning, more when we first started. One of the things we had always talked about was capacity, right?
Right.
It's like, do we have the capacity to do that? And again, with people, there are common responses to a lot of things that are new, right? And even like circumstances that may pop up in a person's life, right? And a lot of times that I don't have the time, I don't have the resources to do it, right? So you don't have the capacity to really do what it is that you'd like to do. And again, like you said, you have to check in. You got to check in with yourself and be honest with yourself. And one of the biggest things I think you said was, again, check your schedule.
Yeah, man.
Check your schedule and see if it realistically can be done. Looks like Wayne is chiming in on something there. Let me see.
I don't know if his comment's gonna fit on the screen. Oh, yes, it does. He says, don't start my day until I finish my day. Don't start my week until I finish my week. Don't start my month until I finish my month. Don't start my year until I finish my year. Prepare my day the evening, night before. When my plan day doesn't go the way I committed it to do, then when I forgive myself and release myself,
Yeah,
that's when
I
that's when I forgive myself and release myself of self-guilt and condemnation.
and that's huge, man. And listen, hey, I ain't gonna sit here and play no games. I'm gonna keep it heart level. Like, I missed one of my appointments today. Like, I real talk. I missed my appointments. And in the process of missing the appointment, I was trying to figure out, I said, how did that happen? As it turns out, I did not do my traditional habit. Last night, I normally review my appointments for the next day. Because I didn't have anything for a couple of days, I'm thinking it's out, but I lost the day somehow because, like, 2 days ago, I was such in flow. I was getting everything done. I was finishing things for the next day. So I thought I had more space. So today I missed one of my appointments. And while I was standing there, I missed the appointment. I felt so bad. Like, I felt like I let the world down. But like Wayne said earlier, we did The Strangest Secret with Earl Nightingale. And just to give you an idea, the subconscious mind and reading those books and how this stuff can be a part of your DNA. I was standing there today washing the car, and I was about to beat myself up about missing that appointment. I'm like, man, you missed the show up. You got a great record. Like, how could you do this, right? And I could hear Earl Nightingale, part of that Strangest Secret thing. He says, quit beating yourself up. I actually heard his voice say, quit beating yourself up. And I just let it go. I said, look, it happened. It doesn't happen often, but this is why the habits are necessary.
Yeah.
Because it keeps you congruent
Right.
with who you say you want to be. And like my coach says, you cannot consistently be who you are not.
Right.
So I know that missing an appointment thing is not going to happen often.
Right.
But it can happen, right? So even with a 95, 98% short rate, it still happened. And literally, it just happened today. Would I want today to be the day to happen? No, I want to be tomorrow, so I wouldn't have to say it during the show. But, keeping it heart level, you have to address those things. But like Wayne said, I think that's very important because, again, the self-criticism, self-doubt, and when it doesn't go right, we have a tendency to try to beat ourselves up. If we meant it and we were intentional and we really wanted to come through, it's hurtful when you don't, when you let other people down.
Now, so the funny thing is, so yours happened this morning, mine happened yesterday morning, right? So We got off as we were getting off our mastermind call. I felt sickness come over me, and I ran and I got me some Theraflu, and I said, okay, I'm like, some what is it? Airborne. I super dosed on some Airborne, and I got under the covers. I was, I'm gonna sweat this thing out tonight. I was in such deep sleep that I had a 6:15 appointment pickup. Whoa. And I for some reason I thought that thing was 8:00. Yeah. And when the call came, it was like it was at 6:15, and it was like, you have to, are you going to be there? And normally my mindset would have been, oh man, you messed up, all the wrong things, right? So I said, how I managed, I said, well, first of all, I've picked up this person before. I know that they usually schedule themselves earlier than before. So I wasn't going to allow my mess up to mess up my mindset.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. I wasn't going to allow my mess up to mess up my mindset and get me off the wrong track. Go pick the woman up. Come to find out, she put the wrong address in where she was going. So I ended up making more money on the transaction than originally scheduled.
Yeah.
And I sat back and I said, I had to analyze, why did that happen that way? And the only thing that I could come up with is there were two mental outcomes from me not waking up on time. Two mental outcomes for myself. I could have beat myself up, or I could have accepted it, processed it, and kept it moving.
Moving on, yeah.
Yep. And so it's not to give myself an excuse, but it is to give myself a self-check that sometimes, like you said, it doesn't happen often. Yeah. But if it does happen, how are you going to reflect it on yourself? How are you going to look at it? And it's not about making excuses, but it is about making sure that you're staying in the right mindset about it. Because if you're in the wrong mindset about it, then what you can do is go down a road mentally that will now say, I never make commitments, or I'm just, all the negative things. Yeah. So it was a mindset adjustment. And yeah, man, it was an experience. And another thing that I was reminded of was, make sure you look at your appointments before you go to sleep. Right?
Yeah. Like Wayne said, at night. And that's what I do too. I look at it the night before, so I know how to set my alarms for the next day. And for whatever reason, like you said, I fail to do that. Yeah. It happens.
Bro.
What was I gonna say to you? Again, going back to that self-confidence coming from self-trust, and self-trust coming from the promises that we keep to ourselves. It's so important. Yeah. We got to keep the promises first to ourselves. That's the inside game.
Yeah.
And if you do it for yourself, it's going to be very simple, very easy to do for somebody else. And if you miss it, hey, don't beat yourself up.
Yeah. Man, let me tell you something. I could have been anywhere in the world at 6:30. But I am glad that I spent this hour with you. Heart level, for real. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We hope that you got a nugget. We hope that there was something that you heard that will inspire you to make those commitments, to commit to your commitments. And you got an inspiration injection for us, right?
I do. And don't forget, guys, Lamont G Photography is available. You never plug. You never do no plug. I'll do some plug, man. I've been hearing about your work, brother. I've been hearing about your work.
Thank you. I appreciate that, brother. Thank you.
Tell them what you do very quickly.
Man, we'll do that on another show.
Okay, we'll do it on another show. All right, man.
Appreciate you.
We appreciate you guys for watching the show again. Like Lamont said, hope that something was said to build you up, to just appreciate you, celebrate you, elevate you. That's what we do here at Confidence Factor Talk. We're here each and every Tuesday, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Tonight's inspiration injection comes from one of our coaches, none other than the infamous Andy Henriquez. He has over 7 million views on one of his YouTube clips. It's a very powerful one. Check it out when you get a chance. Look him up on YouTube, Andy Henriquez. The inspiration injection for tonight is show up for your life. Because if you don't, No one else will.
Wow.
We appreciate you guys for listening tonight. Heart level CF Talks, where we have heart level conversation that lead to transformation. What we say here at Confidence Factor is in everything that you do, make sure that you keep it
high level.
level.
High level.
We'll see you guys next week.
Take care.